Hi, welcome to part 6 of the build journal for the Arctic Wing Blaster. And this is not part of the Arctic Wing Blaster, but this is a piece of a rapid red that I've been using to do some paint testing to try a couple different things out. And the first thing is I'm trying a black primer, sandable primer. It's an automotive primer. And I wanted to try that out and test that out. So I laid a nice good layer of that primer over top of the shell and then came in with a flat white over top of it here. And one thing I did with this, I tried to simulate the worst possible painting conditions I could as far as shell preparation. So I didn't sand the shell and I didn't sand any of the paint. So there was paint, those Nerf Rebel logos that sit on that part of were all over this thing. And so I took and I just painted over that. And in a perfect world, you want to get your blaster sanded perfectly, and in a perfect world, you want to get all the paint that comes from the factory off of it. But we don't live in a perfect world, and a lot of times some of that stuff, whether it's in cracks, it's hard to get to, or you've got a rough handle where you can't get down in between, but you want to save the texture. Sometimes you just have to put paint on top of the stuff that comes out of the factory. Everybody's advice, and it's good advice, is to get that off there, but sometimes it's just not always practical. So what I wanted to test is I wanted to put a nice good thick coat of this primer down and then put the paint on top of it and see if you could see any of the underlying paint coming up through. And the good news is the primer worked flawlessly, attached to the shell, unsanded shell, which you should be sanding your shell, but I wanted to test what would happen if you didn't. Attached flawlessly, covered flawlessly, and the coat of white flat enamel over top of that looked great. And you can see that here, although it's got something else going on here, which is another paint that I was playing with. It was a Rust-Oleum accent. It's supposed to be a stone texture-based paint. It goes on super, super thick. So I got a can of that, and I tested it out on this side on the primer. Some of it sprayed over a little bit onto there. It kind of created an interesting effect on the white. I'm still thinking about, is there possibilities of doing something like that later on with some other blaster. But I'm very undecided at this point whether or not I was thinking about this as for maybe a texture for the pump grip, for the handle. But at this point, I'm still very undecided. You can kind of see the results. It's probably going to have to go on a couple coats. It's probably going to have a gray layer of paint underneath it because you can see the primer coming through. So not sure one way or another whether I'm going to use this on Arctic Wind. The bodywork on the main part of the shell is now complete, and last night I was able to get a nice, good, solid coat of black primer down over the whole thing. Now I'm getting the main shell of the blaster prepped to put the flat white enamel base coat on top of this. So at this point, things are coming along. My daughter came home early, a weekend earlier than we thought she was going to. So the plan had always been all along for her to do the artwork on this, and because she came home a week early, I had to rush and get that white base coat down. So I mean, I got the prime down, got it all sanded, and got that base coat down and had it ready for her. So she got home last night and took that back to her room, got all of her art stuff out, and put together the artwork. So what you see here is what the artwork on the primary shell for Arctic Wind is going to look like. And frankly, it turned out fantastic. It's way more than I was expecting. I thought there was just going to be kind of the picture of a bear up on the top, but she went through and kind of put the whole theme and used the whole part of the shell as the canvas. So at this point, I'm starting to get really excited about how this blaster is going to come together. This is part 6 of the build journal. Thanks for watching.